Hi, everyone. Welcome. My name is Edie Summers, and welcome to a very special episode here on both the Wellness Podcast and also here on YouTube Live. I'm going to read a really special guided meditation for you and also start reading from my book, The Memory of Health. My goal is to turn my book into an audiobook, and this is one way I'm going to start doing that is by having these mindful self-care and healing class series. The Memory of Health series, we'll be exploring different topics. My goal is to read my book from front to back. And of course, I really appreciate your support in listening, and hopefully maybe you can also help me bring my audiobook version of my book to life. But I'm also going to start with a guided meditation. For me, holistic well-being is really, really important. It's the main way that I stay well. I'm someone who developed chronic fatigue in my early 20s after having a ski accident. And it's a really long story, and I go into details in my book, The Memory of Health. This is what my book looks like, and I'm going to be reading from this today. I'm going to start at the beginning and create kind of like an audiobook series. And of course, if you're listening on YouTube or watching this on YouTube, you'll also be able to see this as a video podcast. If you're listening to this through the Wellness Podcast, I will share the link for the video podcast. Feel free to join me here on YouTube if you're listening to this as a regular podcast. You can find me as Wellbeing TV on YouTube, and the handle is at Wellbeing TV Network. So I'm going to start with a guided meditation. So again, the goal today is to talk about mindful self-care and healing. I'm going to be reading from my book too, The Memory of Health. I'll start that in just a little bit. Again, this is what it looks like, The Memory of Health. This book took me 10 years to write, and I'm going to start reading from you create kind of like an audiobook series here on YouTube. But first, I want to share a guided meditation with you. So if you want to get comfortable, you could close your eyes, you could sit or lie down. I just did this for a bunch of preteens, and I thought it was kind of cool. It's a beautiful guided meditation. And again, holistic well-being is super, super important to me. It's the main way that I stay well. I'm someone who can't tolerate prescription drugs. I'm also sensitive to a lot of synthetic perfumes, a lot of synthetic chemicals. So for me, holistic well-being, which is what I talk about in my book in great detail, that's everything that helps me keep my energy. I'm someone who developed chronic fatigue in my early 20s after having a ski accident. And I'm going to start reading to you from my book pretty soon. It's called The Memory of Health. And again, I really appreciate you listening and supporting. I'll be turning this into a podcast series. And this is my way that I can bring my book to life as an audiobook to start. But first, let's start with a guided meditation. So again, I'm going to read this to you. You just want to get really, really comfortable. Feel free to stay seated, or maybe you could sit on a yoga mat. You can sit cross-legged or lie flat on your back. Let your arms rest heavily by your sides. If you feel safe and comfortable, gently close your eyes. If you prefer to keep them open, just fix your gaze softly on one spot. Let's start with 2 deep breaths. Inhale deeply through your nose, filling your lungs with fresh summer air. And exhale completely through your mouth, letting your shoulders drop. Let's do that one more time. Inhale deeply, and then exhale, letting go of any extra energy from earlier today. Now imagine that you are walking down a quiet path in a beautiful ancient forest. The sun is filtering through the tall green trees, creating warm patches of light on the ground. You can feel the soft earth beneath your feet with every step that you take. You hear the gentle rustling of leaves above you as a soft breeze moves through the woods. As you walk, you notice a small, colorful balloon in your hand. This is your worry balloon. Think about one thing that has been bugging you today, or something you've been stressing about. Imagine putting that thought right inside of the balloon. Take a deep breath in. As you blow it out, imagine blowing that worry balloon right up into the sky. Watch it float higher and higher above the trees until it is just a speck. and then it is completely gone. You don't have to carry it anymore. And I see a comment in here. I'll respond to that comment in just a moment here. So right now I'm doing a guided meditation, and then I'm going to read from my book, The Memory of Health. So here's continuing with this guided meditation. You continue walking down the path, feeling lighter and more relaxed. Up ahead, the trees begin to open up. You can suddenly hear a new sound in the distance, the soft rhythmic rolling of ocean waves. You follow the sound and find a safe, cozy cave made of smooth, warm stones. The front of the cave opens right up onto a quiet, private beach. This is your secret sanctuary. No one else knows about it. It belongs entirely to you. Step inside. The air is perfectly calm, and you can hear the waves gently crashing outside. In the center of the cave, there is a soft, comfortable pile of blankets and cushions. Lie down on them in your mind. As you rest here, a glowing, warm blue light appears in the air right above you. As you watch it, the blue light transforms into a beautiful, glowing magic wand. The wand is filled with peaceful, sparkling energy. The magic wand slowly begins to hover above your head, moving down your body to help you completely relax. First, it hovers over the top of your head and your face. You feel all the muscles in your jaw and forehead go soft. Next, the wand drifts down over your neck and shoulders. It melts away any tightness or weight you've been holding there. The spark of the wand moves down your arms and all the way down to your fingertips, making your hands feel warm and heavy. It glides down your chest and your stomach, calming your heartbeat. Then it travels down your legs, wiping away all the tiredness from moving around today and in general. And finally, it hovers over your toes, leaving your entire body completely relaxed, heavy, and still. The magic wand has turned all your tension into peace. Now listen closely to the ocean outside of your cave. We're going to match our breathing to the rhythm of the water. And again, this is a guided meditation that I'm doing for you. So as the wave rolls onto the sand, take a deep breath in. As the wave rolls back out to the sea, let your breath out. Inhale as the wave comes in. Exhale as the wave goes out. Keep breathing just like the ocean waves, breathing in peace, breathing out any remaining stress. As you breathe with the ocean, you look out of the cave entrance and notice a sky. The sky above the water is turning into a beautiful dark twilight. The very first star of the evening appears, shining brighter than anything else in the sky. It is sparkling just for you. In your mind, reach your hand up toward the sky. Imagine gently pulling that bright star down from space, down through the ceiling of your cave, right into your hand. It feels warm, safe, and comforting. Now imagine placing that bright glowing star right in the center of your forehead, right between your eyebrows. As the star rests there, you feel a soft glow spread through your mind. This star is a reminder that you are special, you are important, and you are always connected to the universe around you. You are part of something big, beautiful, and peaceful. Hold on to that feeling. You are exactly where you belong. Take a few moments just to rest here in your quiet cave. And then slowly it is time to return from your ocean cave. Take one more deep, gentle breath and let it out. Feel the solid floor underneath you. And bring some small movements back to your body by wiggling your fingers and wiggling your toes. When you are ready at your own pace, gently open your eyes and bring your attention back to the present moment. So that's a little guided meditation for you. And I'm going to make that into its own thing. But now I'm going to read from my book. So again, I'm going to be creating an audiobook series based on my book. The overall topic is mindful self-care and healing. I'm really big on holistic wellness. And I'm just going to check the comments really quickly. I see someone has commented in here. Hi, Kaylee. Thanks for being here. And yeah, so I'm going to read from my book, The Memory of Health, and this is going to be turned into an audiobook series. Of course, my goal is to turn my book into an actual audiobook, and I really appreciate your help and support with that. So here is my book. If you're seeing this as the video podcast, you might be able to see this on the screen. It's called The Memory of Health. This took me 10 years to write, and I'm going to start reading from this. I'm going to start from the very beginning. The Memory of Health, A Journey to Well-Being. So this is dedicated to my pop, who fought to live and worked on his own book until the day he passed. My father, and just so you know, I'm going to make comments along the way, and I would love to know anything that is like, for instance, maybe you can think about what is your kind of one go-to wellness routine that you do every day. I'm going to write this down in the chat. What is the one main wellness routine that you do every day? It's like your go-to wellness routine. So you can be thinking about that as I'm reading this. So again, the way that I stay well is by practicing holistic well-being. This makes all the difference for me. If I don't practice holistic well-being, I can get sick pretty easily, actually. So, and my father passed away from esophageal cancer. It's been about 18 years now, but he was very dedicated to writing his own book, and he wrote it up until the day that he passed. So I dedicated my book, The Memory of Health, to my father. Again, he passed away from cancer about 18 years ago, and I dedicated my book to him. So again, I'm going to start from the beginning. This is dedicated to my pop, who fought to live and worked on his own book until the day he passed. And then I am a huge fan of quotes. And so you're going to hear a lot of quotes throughout my book. And I also put a lot of graphics in it. So if you ever get the physical copy of this, there are a ton of graphics in here, especially in color. You can get it in color on lulu.com. If you follow the link that's here on the screen, or I'll read it to you, it's bit.ly/chronic fatigue book. Type that into your browser. Again, that's bit.ly/chronic fatigue book. You can find a link from that link to my book on lulu.com, and it's in color on there. And I'm really big on quotes and graphics. So the physical version of my book has a ton of quotes in it, has a ton of graphics. It's all about holistic well-being. It's all about how to improve your energy, especially if you have chronic fatigue. But I also address a lot of other chronic conditions in there, and also other wellness topics and health topics. The overall goal of my book is to not only help anyone who has chronic fatigue for any reason, that could be for any type of reason: CFS, fibromyalgia, lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, multiple sclerosis. But it's also for anyone who's interested in holistic well-being in general. So again, I'm going to start reading from my book from the very beginning. It's dedicated to my pop. And here's the first quote of the book. For years, I never knew whether the twilight was the ending of the day or the beginning of the night. And then suddenly one day I understood that this did not matter at all. For time is but a circle, and there can be no beginning and no ending. And this is how I came to know that birth and death are one. And it is neither the coming nor going that is of consequence. What is of consequence is the beauty that one gathers in this interlude called life. That's by W.O. Abbott. I absolutely love that quote. And what I'm going to do when I read from my book is also make comments and have commentary along the way. So you can kind of have an inside scoop on how I put this book together, why I structured it the way I did, let's say with quotes and graphics. And I also have a lot of research in my book. I have a ton of research on chronic fatigue and holistic well-being. I also covered depression. I studied mental health counseling at the graduate level for a couple of years. So that's where I really learned about a lot of research and how to research. But I'm also very much into kind of the holistic aspect of life. And so you're going to hear a lot of quotes. And when I'm reading from my audiobook, from my book, which I hope to turn into an audiobook, I'm going to read to you, but I'm also going to stop and share with you insights, and feel free to comment about what strikes you when you're listening to me read from my book. So feel free to, if you're listening to this as a video blog here on YouTube, feel free to type into the comments what you'd like me to, let's say, maybe comment more about. What is that research that you're referring to? What is that quote? Things like that. So again, here's the quote again and the opening page for my book. It's dedicated to my pop who fought to live and worked on his own book until the day he passed. My father literally worked on his own book up until the very day he passed. He was literally in his hospital bed giving my mother notes about his book, literally up until moments before he passed away. That's how dedicated he was to writing his own book. That story always really moves me because, he was really hanging on, and that meant so much to him to finish his own book. He had worked on his own book for about 13 years. And then, of course, I have that beautiful quote about, really all that we can kind of comprehend and kind of pick up on in this life is kind of that beautiful interlude between life and death. I love that beautiful quote by W.O. Abbott. So I'm going to continue on reading more here from my book. Dear friend, if you have faced illness, then you are, in my eyes, a hero or heroine. There is little more daunting than the horizon of suffering. The odds are likely that you are reading this book because you have some type of health or other type of challenge, or you know someone else who is seeking answers. You may be searching for a glimmer of hope that this current storyline will end. I wish I could tell you that you will find everything you are looking for in these pages. It's entirely possible that you will. It's also possible that your journey may continue beyond what you read here. In any case, I can offer you this wish to carry with you along your path. Whatever else happens, keep reaching for your goal of feeling better. Whatever challenge you may be facing, it can feel like a lonely road, and we often have to wander off the path to find what it is we truly seek. This is both a terrifying and ultimately liberating experience. While it can be daunting to face a challenge, health or beyond, it is also an opportunity to wake up to the bright light of awareness. Know there is support even in the most unlikely of places, and know that you are not alone. Use any judgment to build a shield around you as you head toward the light. Whatever you do, don't give up. You are closer than you believe. And as you believe, so you shall set yourself free. Be well. So I'm going to read to you the table of contents. You can hear a little bit about what's in my book. And again, I'm not going to be able to obviously read the whole book today. My book is 454 pages, but I'm going to start this audiobook series. I'm going to read to you the table of contents. You can see what's in this book. So first I have a whole section about gratitude, introduction, which I will read to you the introduction. The gratitude, I would recommend checking out the physical book. It's pretty long, but it was really important to me to express gratitude to all the people that helped me, and I was really, really sick. And the first chapter in my book is about my story. It's about how I developed chronic fatigue, how I became ill, and my journey through it actually several times. Chapter 1 is my story, and I call it In My Shoes. Chapter 2 is about making the connection, body burden. So I have calling 911, toxins in the modern world, September 11th, 2001, when the world changed forever. Body burden, connecting the dots leading to chronic illness. Chemical injury. Agent Orange, an early wake-up call. Pleural mesothelioma and veterans. History repeats itself. 7 generations, our children. Environmental illness and MCS, that's multiple chemical sensitivity. Fragrances and VOCs, that stands for volatile organic compounds. All is not lost, meaning there is hope. Even if you are someone who doesn't do well with synthetic chemicals. I talk about cosmetics in chapter 2. Chapter 2 is all about environmental toxins. And again, I'm going to make commentary along the way here. It's going to take me many, many podcasts to get through this book. And of course, my goal is to read this as an actual audiobook. And so I'm working on that goal. I talk about Mossville. Some of you may or may not have heard of that. I talk about Gasland. I talk about dioxins and endometriosis. I talk about animals and pets, not only the way that animals and pets are treated, but also kind of how that mindset of how we treat animals and pets in terms of factory farming, how that might influence, how that's kind of related to holistic well-being. So I cover that in my book as well. And again, so I'm just getting started here. I talk about pet food recalls, the sugar controversy, GMOs, gene revolution, genetic splicing, cell invasion technology, plant and animal extinction violating this species barrier. I talk about bees and butterflies, energy, our energy crisis. I talk about health as a commodity in chapter 2, and prescription drugs, the magic white pill. These are all chapters. And these are all different sections. And now in chapter 3, I titled Waking Up Tired. I thought that was a really good way to frame that. And that this is really where I get into the research of what causes CFS, what may cause chronic fatigue. And again, I cover many different topics for chronic fatigue, and there's a ton of research. I have a ton of references in my book for the research. It took, just so you know, a little bit of a backstory, it took me 9 years to write my book, and it took 1 year to edit it and also put and organize the references. And my mom helped me with that. I'm so grateful that she helped me. This book took forever to put together. It took me 9 years to write, 1 year to edit. So it was a total of 10 years to write this book, all on chronic fatigue, tons of research. And so just organizing the references at the back of my book took forever. And I have to thank my mom for that. So chapter 3, I call Waking Up Tired. So first there's the shadow of fatigue, and then waking up tired. Causes of fatigue. What causes CFS? The $1 million question. The shadow of fatigue. Some theories of CFS. The brain and ME/CFS. Is it a neurally mediated condition? All of this research is in my book. The law of facilitation. Focus on multiple sclerosis, ME/CFS, and chronic fatigue. Fatigue and your thyroid, hypothyroidism, subclinical hypothyroidism, euthyroid sick syndrome, ESS, iron deficient anemia and intrinsic B12 factor, low iron saturation, origins in the digestive tract, microbes, DNA, and your health. I'm reading from my book, The Memory of Health. This is part of the, right now I'm reading to you the table of contents so you can get an idea of what's in my book. Microbes, DNA, and your health, acidic body and candida, the mysterious immune system, energetics versus genetics, Th1 to Th2 shift, inflammation, chronic inflammatory disorders and chronic systemic inflammation, and how those might be connected to what causes chronic fatigue, for instance. A lot of people who have what we call invisible illnesses, a lot of it's tied to chronic inflammatory disorders, we think. And again, a lot of this research is in my book. We're still kind of piecing together everything that's involved in what might cause CFS, or what might cause fibromyalgia, what might cause lupus, what might cause rheumatoid arthritis, what might cause multiple sclerosis. We're getting closer and closer to a lot of these, and chronic inflammation is tied to a lot of them. So I explore a lot of the research and concepts in my book, The Memory of Health. So again, I'm reading to you right now from the table of contents from chapter 3 in my book. Focus on the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve is a nerve that kind of connects your brain and your body. And this is one of the reasons I love yoga so much, because when you can relax more and take some deeper, slower breaths, and it doesn't have to be just yoga, anything that's going to help you relax more and activate your vagus nerve can help reduce symptoms. It can help improve your energy. There are so many things that the vagus nerve is tied to, and again, because it connects the brain and the body. So I talk about the vagus nerve. I talk about focus on rheumatoid arthritis, or RA. I talk about RA, autoimmunity, and the microbiome. I talk about autoimmunity. I talk about the story of your body, psychoneuroimmunology. I talk about oxidative stress, baby, and glutathione and oxidative stress, CFS and oxidative stress, MTHFR mutation and reduced glutathione production, estrogen dominance, ME/CFS, and how it also might be tied to cancer, obesity, diabetes, and endometriosis. I talk about cancer fatigue. Some people can develop chronic fatigue from having gone through chemotherapy or radiation. So that's one way that some people develop chronic fatigue. I developed chronic fatigue after a ski accident. That's how I developed it. People develop chronic fatigue for all different types of reasons. Some people develop chronic fatigue because of fibromyalgia or some other type of chronic condition. So it's different for everybody. And again, holistic well-being is what helps me. And so I'm going to really get into that as I read from my book here. I talk about food allergies and sensitivities. I talk about chronic fatigue and poor methylation, mitochondrial meltdown. I focus on the epidemic of autism and a few natural treatments. And again, everything here is with a grain of salt, right? Like I'm not anti-vax at all. I like to share information, and I share a lot of research in my book, and then I let you make up your own mind. So there's a ton of research in my book, whether if you have some type of chronic condition, or you're looking for holistic well-being or mindfulness, or I have a whole section on self-care. So I'm just sharing an inside look at what's in my book. I'm going to be reading from it and also sharing commentary along the way. And always feel free to type in here, if you're listening to this as a video blog, what is the one main wellness routine that you do every day? Or you can think about it if you're listening to this as an audio podcast. So again, I'm reading right now from the table of contents in my book, The Memory of Health. Right now I'm in chapter 3. It's called Waking Up Tired. I also talk about fibromyalgia. The story continues. CNS, which is the central nervous system, CNS, nervous system overload. I talk about chemical injury and how it relates to veterans, environmental injury, and MCS, which again stands for multiple chemical sensitivity. I talk about the stress of immunotoxicity, chemical injury, and damage to the immune system. I talk about the clinical ecology patient. I talk about MCS, again, multiple chemical sensitivity, mold, mycotoxin illness. These are all different topics in chapter 3, which is all about kind of environmental toxins. And of course, I start with 9/11, because did you know that in 9/11, there are so many first responders in 9/11 who got really, really sick after cleaning up after the aftermath of 9/11. And a lot of them passed away. And they also a lot of them couldn't get the care that they needed because of the laws that were in place. So there's a whole story around what happened to the first responders and how they got really, really sick after cleaning up after 9/11. So that was a real wake-up call for a lot of people, what happened with 9/11. And I cover 9/11 in my book in terms of how it relates to environmental toxins. So again, I'm reading from chapter 3. These are some of the topics in chapter 3 in my book, The Memory of Health. I talk about highly sensitive persons. I'm a highly sensitive person. Did you know that if you're an HSP, a highly sensitive person, you may be a little bit more vulnerable to developing, let's say, chronic fatigue or other types of health challenges? You have a kind of a more sensitive nervous system. I can definitely relate to that. I have a very sensitive nervous system. And, this makes me think of, I just watched the movie Michael for Michael Jackson. Has anyone seen that movie? And I swear, Michael Jackson, I wish I'd known this beforehand. I really believe he was a highly sensitive person. I've seen examples of highly sensitive people, let's say celebrities who are highly sensitive. And I've even had people reach out to me. I've had people reach out to me for all different reasons related to having developed chronic fatigue or other types of health challenges. But I've had I've even had conversations with a few people who are in the media who are highly sensitive people who have developed chronic fatigue. And if you're kind of extra sensitive to energy, that can be an issue. And I address that in my book, what to do if you're a highly sensitive person. I talk about the healing crisis in chapter 3, waking up tired. I talk about your second brain, the enteric nervous system. I talk about focus on your neurotransmitter system. Neurotransmitters are really important, and we get those. Those are created by protein. It's really important to have enough protein in your diet, for instance. And again, like I said, I'm going to be doing commentary along the way here, so you can kind of get the inside scoop. And if you haven't already noticed, I eat and breathe wellness, health and wellness, and holistic wellness. I have so for about 30 plus years now. I eat, breathe, and live it because it's what keeps me well. So protein, having enough protein in your diet is how you build those neurotransmitters out, and that's what can help you stay calm, let's say by developing more GABA. Now you can also actually stay more calm by, let's say, doing more yoga. That can help increase GABA in your system. But again, I cover all these topics in my book and more. And feel free to follow along, whether it's on my wellness podcast or here on YouTube. Again, if you want to follow me on YouTube, my channel is Wellbeing TV. The handle is at Wellbeing TV Network. So I'm all about holistic wellness, and I'm reading from my book right now, The Memory of Health. I'm turning this into an audiobook series. So again, I'm still on chapter 3 here. I'm reading to you from the table of contents. So yeah, neurotransmitters, super, super important. Make sure you eat well and take care of yourself. It makes a huge difference. So I talk about serotonin and the communication connection and how it might relate to not only IBS, which is irritable bowel syndrome, but also CFS, which is chronic fatigue syndrome, FM, which is fibromyalgia, and check this one out. I talk about serotonin and depression. Again, I mentioned this. I studied mental health counseling for 2 years at the graduate school level. And did you know now depression is being looked at as a whole body condition? There's a lot more that you can do, whether it's depression or anxiety. There's a lot more that you can do for yourself than I think we previously realized. Of course, you always want to check in with a healthcare practitioner. But if you check out my book, The Memory of Health, I definitely talk about not only chronic fatigue, but I also talk about other types of health or wellness challenges, including depression, and how it's now considered kind of a whole body condition. There's a lot more that you can do than you realize. And I also talk a lot about trauma in my book. So if you've been through trauma for any reason, it's worth checking out my book, because I have been through trauma myself in multiple ways. And so for me, talking about trauma and how it may contribute to maybe developing certain health issues or other health or wellness challenges is very real. And there's a lot more that you can do than you realize. So again, reading again from chapter 3, these are some of the topics I cover. I talk about fatigue and depression. I talk about stress and depression. I talk about a new theoretical model of depression. I talk about potential treatments and interventions for depression within the new model. This is all in my book. A connection between depression and CFS, that's chronic fatigue syndrome. I talk about early stress and chronic illness. This is a really big one. If you have gone through significant amount of stress and when you're growing up, that can really affect your nervous system. And there has been a correlation between people who have a lot of stress growing up and trauma and developing chronic health issues when they grow up. So again, I cover this all in my book, The Memory of Health. And I just want to say, though, there is a lot of hope out there. Don't ever give up. Regardless of whatever you've been through, there's a lot of hope. So right now, again, I'm reading from the table of contents in my book, The Memory of Health. I'm in chapter 3. I talk about trauma, as I mentioned, traumatic stress, PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. I know that you've heard that term. I talk about PTSD and traumatic stress. I talk about PTSD and memory. Now, of course, the title of my book is The Memory of Health, and you might be wondering, why did I choose the word memory? So again, I'll be offering commentary along the way here, and let me give you the backstory of why I chose that, at least a little bit. And I'll probably revisit that several times because there's a lot behind it. Originally, I was thinking that memory is like, literally remembering what it felt like to feel better. That was the original reason I chose the title Memory from the Memory of Health, my book. But memory, the word, is also tied to mindfulness. And so, again, the topic today is mindful self-care and healing. And mindfulness is tied to memory. And so, anytime that you can allow yourself to be more mindful, think about it. You're going to remember that situation more than the average person. So mindfulness is tied to memory. And so there's also kind of that backstory. And let me read to you from the back cover of my book. Here's the back cover of my book. And I talk a little bit about, I love this cover, by the way. Richard Crooks made this cover for me, and he had chronic fatigue himself. Look how beautiful this is. I'm going to read to you from the back cover, and then I'll get back to the table of contents. But Richard Crooks is an incredible graphic designer. And you can see how he has this kind of tunnel in the beginning, like this dark tunnel out in a forest heading toward the light. He had chronic fatigue as well for a very different reason than me. And then he developed this gorgeous, gorgeous back cover. Let me read to you from the back because I talk about mindfulness on here, and then I'll get back to the table of contents. So the Memory of Health is a meditation and conversation on well-being. What makes you thrive, even in the face of great odds? At the age of 22, Edie, that's me, developed chronic fatigue after having surgery for a ski accident. While physical therapy was helpful, she had to seek alternative treatment to regain full use of her knee. In the course of seeking answers to her health challenges, she discovered the power of mindful living and became a conscious consumer in her quest for true well-being. Whether you like mainstream, alternative, or integrative medicine as your solution for health and well-being, be conscious of the choices you make, because the choices you make matter. And the choices that we make matter, especially when it comes to our health and well-being. I'm reading from the back of my book right now. The Memory of Health. And so here is a little bit more about mindfulness and how it's connected to memory. I found this research when I was in grad school. I love this quote. Listen to this quote. Mindfulness in its original meaning denotes a lucid state of being. Isn't that amazing? Let me read that to you again. Mindfulness in its original meaning denotes a lucid state of being. And I have the research that you can see where I have the references for that quote inside my book here. But I absolutely love that too. And here's more from the back of my book. Mindfulness leads you deep into the core of your existence as a sentient being on a tremendous journey into the mystery of love and being exquisitely alive. When it comes down to how we perceive life is everything. Perhaps it's not so much genes or environment as it is ultimately how we interpret experiences and circumstances that matter most. And that's tied to epigenetics, which I will get to in a lot in my book here, The Memory of Health. So epigenetics is coming up. Epigenetics means above and beyond genetics. It kind of means how your genes can express themselves. That has more to do with lifestyle and lifestyle medicine. So again, I cover all of that in my book. So again, that's a little bit on how mindfulness is tied to the title of my book, The Memory of Health. And let me get back to reading to you. Again, I'm reading from my book, The Memory of Health. This is an audiobook series, both as a podcast and a video series here on YouTube. So whether you're listening through my podcast, the Wellness Podcast, or here on YouTube, or both, I will make sure that I also share the link so that if you're listening to this as an audio podcast, you can check out the video podcast of this too, because sometimes it's nice to see who you're listening to, right? So that's what's beautiful about YouTube, is that you can see a podcast as a video podcast, and video podcasts are really growing a lot right now. At the very end of chapter 3, I talk about stress, coping, and adaptive flexibility practices. I talk about mind, body, spirit, and your health. I talk about focus on the hypothalamus, a bridge between mind and body. I talk about your nervous system and the stress response system. And I also talk about in chapter 3 in my book, the sickness response, CFS, autism, depression, and fibromyalgia. I talk about adrenal fatigue, or adrenal fatigue gets a lot of coverage in the media, on social media. And so I talk about, is it really adrenal fatigue? Is that a correct term to use? If it's not adrenal fatigue, what is it? Do we call it CFS? Why is that term thrown around so much? And also in that section on adrenal fatigue, in my book in chapter 3, I also talk about the huge divide between mainstream medicine and alternative medicine. And believe me, unfortunately, there's a pretty big divide. And this frustrates me to no end because I really feel like both mainstream medicine and alternative medicine and everything in between has so much to offer people. So I talk about that in my book, The Memory of Health, chapter 3, under adrenal fatigue, but I also talk about that divide between mainstream and alternative medicine and hopefully how we can kind of bridge that gap more. And then at the very end of chapter 3, I talk about toward a new theory of CFS. And so now chapter 4, how I got better, sacred energy, sacred life, the lights of health. I talk about nutrition and digestive health, the upward spiral of health, eat natural to feel great, the quick fix versus sustainable health. I talk about the 5 keys to sustainable well-being. This is where I really get into holistic well-being in my book, The Memory of Health. And again, I really put a lot of care into this book. This book took me 10 years to write. It's quite a long book, although you can actually really start anywhere in the book and hopefully get some inspiration on holistic well-being, or if you're looking to improve your energy. In chapter 4, I also talk about nutrition, synergy in its finest form. I talk about tips, supplements, and recipes. I do have a couple of recipes in my book, not too many because it's not a recipe book, but I have a couple in there because nutrition is so important. It's so important that I've learned this more and more. I mean, nutrition is really, it's the elements that feed your body, right? It's what gives your body energy. So super, super important. I talk about what I do on days I wake up tired. I talk about the symptom of 0 point energy, your turnaround point. I talk about homeostasis versus stability. What is stress exactly? I talk about the art of self-care and the practice of well-being. I talk about self-care and holistic stress management. Managing your stress is really, really important. And we're realizing that more and more. And stress, chronic stress, is tied to a lot of chronic conditions. I don't think a lot of people realize that. So it's super important to manage your stress. And so I go into great detail about ways you can manage your stress. And if you follow me on YouTube on Wellbeing TV, that's a lot of what my channel is about. The overarching theme is holistic well-being and holistic living. I have a lot of meditation videos here on YouTube. Of course, I also branch into other areas, but I definitely love to help you manage your stress, whether that's through guided meditations, meditation videos, yoga. I offer a lot of yoga classes. I talk a lot about managing your stress in my book, The Memory of Health. It's super, super important, especially if you have a chronic condition for any reason. So we'll get into all of that. I talk about the relaxation response that was discovered by Herbert Benson. That's the opposite of the stress response. The relaxation response is really interesting. It's where your body starts to relax, and it's where your body heals. It's where your body goes into rest and digest, and that's literally where your body heals. And a lot of us are stuck in fight or flight. And I mean, you think about it these days with the news and everything that's going on in the world, it's no wonder that people are stuck in fight or flight. So again, this is really important to me to talk about stress management and holistic well-being. So in chapter 4 in my book, How I Got Better, how I improved my energy from chronic fatigue, I talk about stress management, along with nutrition. I talk about brain chemistry. I talk about exercise. Just do it if you can. If you can't, don't sweat it. Chapter 4, How I Got Better, continued. I talk about exercise and your immune system. I talk about restorative movement. This can be really, really helpful if you're someone who has really, really low energy, let's say from chronic fatigue syndrome, or maybe some other type of chronic condition, and you can't do regular exercise. There are a lot of ways that you can do more of restorative movement in order to gently build up what I call your energy envelope. So I go into all of these in great detail in my book. And that's what's coming up next in this chapter. I talk about energy. What is it and how to create more of it? I talk about the energy envelope. I talk about sleep. Sleep is super important. Now, it's been 10 years since I wrote my book. So there's a lot of research that's come out since then, especially on sleep, let's say, for instance, and stress. And trauma. There's a lot of research that's always coming out more and more. So that's why, anything that is not in my book on these subjects, I'm going to put here on YouTube, right? Join me, stay tuned for the most up-to-date tactics to help you stay well, whether it's sleeping better, eating better, managing your stress, improving energy. I stay on top of the research. I'm always trying to help you feel as good as you can. It's that important to me. My own well-being is important to me, and it's important to me that your well-being is as great as it can be too. So again, from chapter 4, I also talk about tools for de-stressing. I talk about the summary of how I got better. I talked about the practice of well-being, and I talk about putting it all together, how to give yourself the best chance to heal. And then chapter 5, I call chapter 5 the memory of health. And again, that's what this title of this series is today. For this opening to the audiobook series is mindful self-care and healing, and also the beginning of the memory of health series. What is your memory of health? And it's going to be different for everybody. So your journey to well-being, again, that is actually the subtitle of my book now, A Journey to Well-being. What is your unique journey back to well-being? It's different for everybody. This is one thing I've really learned about how people heal. And I actually, I've interviewed so many people on these subjects too. So not only did I write a book on this subject, but I interview people all the time about, let's say, someone who has a chronic condition themselves, like what helped them feel better. And one of the things I'm noticing over and over again, it's not just one thing that usually makes you feel better. It's usually several things. It's the synergistic effect that makes you feel better. So in chapter 5 in my book, I talk about kind of like, what is your unique journey and combination of factors that takes you back to well-being. I talk about heal your body, heal your spirit, health resides in your body, embodiment. I talk about healing from trauma, self-love and embodiment, getting grounded in your authentic self, health and true well-being, how to reconnect with your body, coming home to your heart and using your energy and life currency, connection with self and others, connection and feedback loops of energy, your body as your guide to well-being. And again, these are very deep topics. And of course, I'm going to be reading to you from this book that goes into the detail of these topics. You can see I have a really detailed table of contents, and there's a good reason for that. For one thing, I don't have, there's no way in my book to look up the topics in the back of the book. So that's why I wanted to make the table of contents so comprehensive. So that you could hopefully find what you're looking for through the table of contents. That's why they're so extensive. I talk about the solution is in the problem, symptoms and instinctive health, your body's story, the power of metaphor, getting in touch with nature, wake up to your suffering. I talk about the journey to well-being and change. I do go into some wellness coaching in my book. I'm also trained as a wellness coach. I'm also trained as a high performance coach. I have a lot of training in many modalities, including yoga, including wellness coaching, including mental health. So I do put some coaching into the 5th chapter in my book, The Memory of Health. I talk about positive psychology and your health, energetics versus genetics, interconnection and the universal mind, yoga, mind, body, spirit, and universe, riding the wave of the mind, body, spirit connection. I talk even about wave memory and memory and morphic resonance. I talk about the Tao of health and well-being. So I do get some of this is very spiritual in chapter 5 because again, holistic well-being is what I love. So and I really find that people can heal on many different levels, right? And you can kind of find that entry point into well-being from many different entry points. It doesn't necessarily have to be the physical. For some people, they might find an entry point into healing or well-being through the spiritual or through the emotional or through the mental. Everyone is different. So that's why I talk about these different things. And then I talk about there's much more in chapter 5, but I'm not going to read all these little subtitles in here or subcategories. And then I finally talk about the memory of health. And then there are resources, references, highlights, and author information. So, and again, I'm probably not going to read to you the gratitude section because it's several pages. Feel free to pick up the physical copy to read that. And again, you can get this in color. So you can see I made a beautiful gift color version of this. It's gorgeous. It has tons of beautiful interior color graphics. I have a ton of graphics in my book and a lot of quotes. I love quotes. So if you want to get the physical book to read the gratitude that I wrote in there, it's several pages, and see all the references and resources, see all of the quotes and graphics. There's a beautiful gift version. Go ahead and do that. So again, I'm going to read just a little bit more to you here. I'm going to read the introduction to you. These are some of the highlights from my book, The Memory of Health. Here are some of the major topics in this book that may be of importance to you. And the reason I made this way and did the highlights at the very beginning of my book is because a lot of people that might be reading my book in person are pretty tired, I'm assuming. And so they may not have the energy to read through the whole thing. And so I wanted to put the most important parts right at the beginning and an introduction. So that's one way that you can approach my book if you're looking at it physically, is just read the introduction. It's a couple pages. It goes over the highlights in my book. And then, of course, when you have more energy, you could read longer through the book. But I'll start with reading the introduction. It's just a couple pages. And of course, I'll continue to read my entire book over the course of this entire series. And of course, I really appreciate your support in helping me listen to this as an audiobook series. And hopefully, I can bring my book to life as an actual audiobook sooner than later, because I've had a lot of requests for that. There are a lot of people that are so sick that they literally can't read a book. They can only listen to the audiobook. And that's one of the reasons why I want to make an audiobook version. So let me read just the introduction to you here. And then I'll conclude this for today. Actually, you know what? I'm going to save the introduction for a little bit later. I just want to, I'm going to read this section to you, some things to ponder. And then I'm going to end this live stream for today, but then I'll start the second series in this. It'll be reading from the introduction and then starting to read from my book, chapter 1. That will be the next time. Again, it's going to take me a while to get through this. This book is really long. It's 454 pages. But here are, instead of reading the introduction, and the reason I'm saying that is because I have a cat and he is meowing very, very loudly. He tends to do that when I get on video. And so I'm going to have to let him out. So let me just read a little bit from the beginning about some things to ponder. And again, and then I'll leave you with that. And then for the next time I come back to this for the audiobook series, the Memory of Health audiobook series on mindful self-care and healing, I'll start with the introduction. So let me read to you some things to ponder. This part is really short. Remember this: the sun is on your side. The moon is on your side. Your body is on your side. Mindfulness closes the gap between symptoms and well-being and increases neuroplasticity. What would your day be like if driven by positive emotions and awareness, instead of by unconscious anxiety? Who would you be if you were an R, if you were all and only love? So again, there's so much more I can read from this. I wanted to read the introduction to you, but I think it's several pages long, and I don't think my cat is going to be that patient. So I will come back to that. But I will leave you with this question that I also have typed into the chat here. What is the one main wellness routine or go-to wellness routine that you do every day? I'd love to hear. Feel free to leave a comment, whether it's here on YouTube or on any of the podcast platforms that you might listen to this podcast. Think about that. I'd love to read your comments. I'm able to visit for sure. Apple. I think Apple has a way to share comments on there. You could always come here. I will, when I share this as an audio podcast, I'll share the link to the YouTube version, the video podcast version. You could come and comment here on YouTube as well. But yeah, just think about what is the one main go-to wellness routine that you do every day that keeps you well. Something to think about, and I'll see you again soon. Thank you for listening, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.